This is the first time I'm doing this, so bear with me for any technical malfunctions. This is our first webinar in this series, and with an external audience. So I apologize for any glitches or technical difficulties that should arise. And I will warn you now, I am multitasking between 3 screens on one small laptop. So bear with. I have muted and stopped video feed for all participants in order for all to focus on the presenter as well as to protect your individual privacy. This webinar is being recorded and will be utilized for both the Aurora Chamber of Commerce and the Aurora Mental Health Center's internal and external audiences in order to continue supporting our community during this challenging time. To further protect your individual privacy, each of you have the ability to click on the 3 dots on the upper right hand of your individual screens and then rename yourself, or you could even just put in ... in place. When we get to the Q&A section during the last 20 minutes of today's webinar, please direct all questions to me, Rick Jewell, via the chat function privately, and I will state the question to the presenter and to all. This will further promote more privacy as to who is asking the question. If you so choose to keep your name visible, that is fine. And if you wish me to unmute your audio so that you can ask the question directly, please state so in your private message that you send to me. The chat feature is found at the bottom of your Zoom screen. It will open up a chat feature box to the right, and it will say everyone in the dropdown. That's what it defaults to. Feel free to change that everyone in the dropdown to say Rick Jewell in order to be able to send the chat questions to me privately. You may send your questions throughout the presentation. However, they will not be asked until the Q&A time at the very end. I will stop talking now and allow our wonderful presenter, Ms. Debbie Stafford, to take over. Thank you all for your patience during those few moments. Debbie, it's all yours.
Thank you, and thank you, Rick and Dee Dee, for all your hard work behind the scenes. I'm Debbie Stafford. I work with the Aurora Mental Health Center. So great to see so many of my friends here today. I've been given the honor of addressing the topic, Coping with COVID-19, Managing the Stress and Anxiety Within the New Norm. It's pretty reasonable to say probably most all of us have been through a roller coaster of emotions. And so I just kind of want to know how you're all doing with physical distancing, and maybe I'll get to hear that when we get to the chat part. So I was going to tell you a little bit of how I'm doing with it right now. I'm living alone. I think most of you know my husband died 1.5 years ago, and it's kind of like it's all my world, and I'm doing all right with that. But my birthday, I was born on Easter Sunday. My birthday was actually last Sunday, and at 4:30 in the afternoon, my daughter called and said, come outside with your phone, your camera on, and I did, and my family did a birthday parade with about 10 decorated cars, honking and balloons and throwing out flowers, and it was a delight. So I know that I've seen lots of creative ways that people have been celebrating each other, celebrating holidays and events within their family. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about are some things that we're hearing. So I was actually on a legislative call today and kind of getting some updates and hearing some things from Washington, and then talking about stages that people find themselves in. Interesting, one of the stages was a stage of emotional distress, where people are finding that the distress is kind of setting in for them. I also know many people, as I know, especially through the chamber membership, that there is financial distress and really realities starting to set in for people, realities of those unintended impacts that you just couldn't measure or think about as this all began. Also, anxiety and loneliness might be setting in for some. Does anybody here just have the desire to just go for a drive in your car or go roam somewhere that we used to take for granted? I know I have those feelings. but also family connectedness. So I know a lot of people are connected together in their households. Other people find themselves kind of isolated. So here's how I sort of relate to what we've been going through. I was looking at the stages of grief, and we understand that grief, we think of grief as loss, maybe loss of a loved one through death. But we also know that grief has a huge list of things that we can grieve. We can grieve things like the loss of employment, the loss of our routines, the loss of home or loss of relationships, the loss of dreams, the loss of hope, the loss of peace, much more. I would imagine every one of us, as we would look at what we were doing in our lives when this all began, we could really think about how would you have thought the rug would sort of be pulled out from under what you had going on in your own life at that time. So when I break out grief, grief is broken out into stages, and the first stage is oftentimes shock. Now, grief doesn't always go exactly in the exact order. It can be a roller coaster ride. But the stage of shock, initially not believing that this could be happening, the fear of the unknown or the uncertainty that is happening. I know at our work at Aurora Mental Health, when they began to talk about the need for us to really rethink how we're able to deliver mental health care for people, I was one of the early people that our director said, how about if you go work from home, and then added the caveat, because of your age. And I'll tell you, does anybody relate to that? That was a wound to my spirit, because I think I'm about in my 30s. My age says I'm more than doubled that, but I don't believe I'm that old. But because I was in one of those age groups that made me vulnerable, I was one of those people early on that they said, why didn't you start working from home? For me, that was kind of shocking. And then I had to believe, it really can't be that bad. So the next stage is denial. Anybody here go through that stage where we're thinking this just can't be as serious as they're telling us it is, not believing it's going to happen to us? I know people who say, I don't know anybody that's been directly ill or impacted, but we hear of it. And I don't know about you, but after this last weekend, I think I can count 5 people that I know who actually lost a loved one in the last week due to COVID-19. And so I think moving on from that denial, we're starting to realize that this is a real experience for all of us. As we move through those stages of grief, the next stage is anger. And there can be some real anger. Has anybody here, you can raise your hand or you don't have to, but has anybody felt kind of angry? Maybe felt anger that it feels like something that we can't even see has put the brakes on in our lives, has impacted our schools, our businesses, our finances. It has impacted the fear of our health and what that feels like. So that is one of the stages, anger. Moving through anger, here's some of the fear. So for 28 years, my part-time world, I am a domestic violence therapist. I treat offenders of domestic violence. And in that world, one of the things we know is the more isolated that people become when they're not knowing how to manage their anger very well, not having the skills or the tools that they need, there's a really greater risk of then internal family trauma with that anger. And so those are things that we want to be really aware of. But we know that another stage is the stage of depression. Sometimes depression would be classified as anger turned inward, but depression, where we might find ourselves withdrawing or maybe not utilizing as much self-care, isolating. Has anybody stayed in your pajamas for longer than a day or so? I read the other day, somebody said it was 4 days and they thought they should take a shower. So I know for me, I've started to tell myself, get up in the morning, take a shower, put on, some decent clothes and look kind of decent for the day. But once we kind of move through depression, And you know, depression can happen for somebody even in just a couple of weeks of going through a difficult experience. So they tell us that depression and anxiety are the two most common mental health challenges that any of us can experience. And those are real and those are normal, and there is nothing abnormal about experiencing depression or anxiety. But following depression, we can go through a stage of bargaining. And you know, the bargaining is kind of like making deals. Like we think of in the military, you think of somebody in a war zone in a foxhole making a deal with God. You know, God, can you get me out of here? I promise you I'll do this and this for you if you can just spare me and get me out of here. Some of us maybe have been going through that stage, just trying to figure out how are we going to find what it takes to get through this. But one of the next stages is the stage of acceptance. The reality that we are where we are and it's beyond our control. It's bigger than what a lot of us have the power to control, and accepting that. Sometimes that comes with maturity in life. Sometimes that comes through a lot of pain. And I know this, I'm looking at your faces of so many of you that are on this call, and behind every face on this call, every person has a story. Every person on this call has lived experience. Every person that will ever listen to this with this recording, we've all have a story to tell, and it adds to the seasoning of our lives. Unfortunately, this is something that we are going to be adding into our lives, but that acceptance of saying some things happen that are beyond our control. So I want to talk about another kind of grief. That grief is called ambiguous grief. Ambiguous grief is sometimes considered grieving the loss of a loved one who's still living, maybe having an estranged relationship with someone, somebody that you no longer have interaction with. That's ambiguous grief, grieving the loss of what you wanted to have or believed you would have had. But for many people, there are people who were right on the precipice of some amazing things right now, and they can still see that those possibilities are out there, but maybe the world might move on past them. Ambiguous grief is grieving the loss of something that is still there that we have not yet been able to grasp for ourselves. And that can even be our dreams. I know everybody has a story, but I have a little granddaughter on the Olympic figure skating track, and she literally, the night before they were competing for regionals to take her on to her next national placement, they canceled their competition. After people had flown in, they were all here and have not yet made any plan to have a way for these skaters to get on to nationals. That's just one example of so many people that were just in the middle of their plans, so many people that were in the middle of their lives. But with ambiguous grief, I've heard people say they were planning to retire, and maybe the fear of what's happened with the stock market, maybe the fear of other things that have gone on actually have caused them to believe they can't yet retire. So there are many different impacts. And because we know that so many people's businesses are sort of on one side of this or the other. You're either in high gear trying to meet the demand for a considered necessary need, or you've been told you have to put your brakes on. And looking at both sides of those, it is a horrific thing. And trying to help support each other in how we get through this, that's certainly a rough situation. I know my own daughter has had her own business in Aurora for almost 15 years, and the brakes are just on it. And I'm so proud of her. She came up with an alternate opportunity of making little straps that help you not have to have your face mask on your ears, but it can be held up here for people that are wearing those a lot, which is a lot of us. And she's found a lot of people are asking for that. Sometimes we know that out of our necessity, we also get creative. And there's a balance in how we look at that. Well, I want to talk about trauma notches. So our mind, we have trauma notches in the brain. COVID-19, I believe, will become a trauma notch. It's a trauma notch probably for all of us. It's a trauma notch for our children. But a trauma notch is almost like, remember when we raised our kids and you'd go measure them with the yardstick and you'd take a pencil and write on maybe the threshold of a door as they grew, and you would measure how they grow. Our brain has developed trauma notches. So for many of us, we're old enough, we could go back. There are people that you could mention different wars. You know, where were you with Vietnam? Some people still remember Pearl Harbor. People remember various types of traumas and events. Most of us would remember, we'd say, where were you on 9/11? Many people say they had the news on. They watched one plane go into the World Trade Center, and while you were just sitting there in shock, thinking it was an accident, you watch the next one fly in. That's a trauma notch. For many people, that trauma notch is there. Locally, how many people here would say, all you have to do is say Columbine, or all we have to do is say the Aurora theater shooting, or many of us have had maybe experienced accidents or the loss of a loved one. Our brain develops trauma notches, and those will stay with us down the road. But I want to talk a little bit about resilience and how do we spring back? We're just now beginning to hear about what might this look like. And I'll have to tell you, I heard somebody say again today, when they begin to maybe slowly let people go back into their life, they might let younger people go back in. So I thought, man alive, there I am on the back end of this, probably going to get put in that category. Maybe some of you relate to that in your world as well. But when we look at resilience, how do we become resilient in the middle of a trauma event? And resilience is self-care. Does anybody here really mastered your self-care right now? You feel like you're doing pretty well with getting out, walking, getting some fresh air, taking care of yourself, keeping your diet where it needs to be, exercise, just hygiene. But resilience is really going to need to be an internal decision for so many of us. You know, taking a walk is a great thing, or learning a new skill. I've got a guitar here that I just started learning about a year ago. So it's a great time to kind of pick at the guitar. And maybe there are those of you that you've been baking more, or you've been doing things. I've heard people have been cleaning out more closets and drawers and things they hadn't touched. I pulled out the couch and vacuumed and shampooed under there. So if you want to check out under my couch, it's pretty decent right now. But if we stop and think about some of the other things that we can do, really looking for what gives us internal peace and focusing on what we have the power to focus on, and realizing that I don't know, some of us are news junkies, and others have said you just have found you have to turn the news off for a lot of the day, especially early on when it felt like every few hours there was another directive. And I think now we're sort of into another phase of saying, how do we manage this? But maybe watching news incessantly for some people is really invigorating. For other people, it may actually wear you down. And so trying to find a balance in that as well. Also looking at, you know, there's a lot of different funding sources that are coming out. And I would believe that you're getting that information hopefully pretty quickly. I know in our own city of Aurora, they just put out a small business a grant, and I know there are different federal through the for the Relief Act, there are different federal opportunities. So for some, focusing on how could you go after every possible resource to help you recoup where you found yourself right now. That can be a sense of feeling powerless, but trying to implement some skills of power in the middle of it all. And also just reaching out to somebody else and trying to encourage them. A dear friend of many of ours, her husband passed away in a extended care facility this week, and she hadn't been able to go see him, isn't able to do anything about a final service. There are many people who really are alone that we could pick up the phone, we could encourage them, we could be a support. So I'm going to have this sent to you, so you'll get in some of the materials that you can access. It's a little, it's a refrigerator cheat sheet. It's going to look like this, but I'm going to walk you through it real quick, and then hopefully you'll access it. And it's something I hope you'll print and put on your refrigerator. I actually give this to my, and I require that they learn this, but they're called stress relief rules to live by. And the first one, it's a real basic counseling principle. It's called HALT, which we know is stop. So when you're feeling overwhelmed, halt and stop and ask yourself, am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Or am I tired? Deal with what you have the power to deal with. It won't fix everything, but it might help even out your blood sugar, might help your head think a little more clearly. The next one is what I call the 15-minute rule, but this is work to home transition. And there are people who are still going out to work, and they're still going through that transition of coming home. There are other people who are now having to work from home. And what I really want to encourage is what we call a work to home transition is when you're leaving from work going home, take care of your needs, be comfortable, get a mindset so that when you re-engage with your loved ones or whoever is there, or maybe it's you, but when you go in, do your best to have some energy, emotionally, some attention to give your loved ones, even for about the first 15 minutes. Talk to them about your day. Try to make it so you're not yet sort of dumping the burden of your day on them, but hear them first, and then ask if it's okay if you go take care of your needs. Get comfortable, and then try to re-engage for the rest of the evening. I have found that works a lot better than coming in if you've had a bad day, being grumpy, dumping your grumpiness on others. I'm pretty selfish. I like a peaceful household. So if we choose to come in and set a peaceful entry and a peaceful environment, I think it goes a long way. But I also want us to think about this in our work to home transition while we're working at home. Wherever you've set up your office, try to still set some structured hours so that you can shut that down and you literally leave work and you can go into your home and you've put your work aside for maybe the rest of the evening or however that works for you. Give yourself permission to take care of you, to love you, to be good to you. Because when we're living with our office right in our face, that doesn't mean we need to be in that office all the time. Finding the balance is really good. There's another really quick, good rule. It's called the 90-second rule. The 90-second rule says, if something has happened to upset you, stop and think for 90 seconds before you say or do anything. And that 90 seconds might make a difference. Another one is think twice. So if something happens, it's upsetting, stop and think about it twice before we open our mouth. Man, in my life, I've opened my big mouth more times than I needed ever to think about. And sometimes if I'd have just stopped, slowed down, thought about it, it might have been a thoughtful response rather than a quick reaction. So that's another good stress relief rule to live by. I love this one. This is called the 1, 2, 3s of active listening. We have one mouth, use it the least. We have 2 eyes and 2 ears. We focus. So who's ever done this? You're busy on your computer, you're watching a TV show, you got your phone going, whatever you're doing, and you're trying to talk to somebody in your world, and you aim your ear in their direction, but your attention is really on the technology, and you think you're listening. But at the end of the day, maybe that person doesn't feel listened to. Maybe they don't feel heard. So I think it's really important that we remember to be a good listener, put down the technology, get our eyes away from any other, the TV, games, whatever, the computer, and focus and hear and validate each other. One mouth, use it the least. 2 eyes and 2 ears, look and listen. And then 3, give 3 validations. Try to state back 3 different ways what you think that person said so they understand you heard them before you ask if you can share your thoughts. And probably the last one I think is a good one. Whose problem is it? Has anybody here ever sucked into somebody else's problem and we get really worked up about it? And at the end of the day, it kind of wasn't our problem. And we maybe expended more emotional energy than we really needed to do. So these are just a few things that I hope may be tools. And again, we're going to make these handouts available that you can access through the website, and just some things to think about. But one of the things that I want to really end with or share with you that I think is so important, and it is the serenity prayer. And the serenity prayer says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's probably a good prayer for all of us right now. So I do want to let everybody know the Aurora Mental Health Center is open. We're seeing clients. We have implemented telehealth. We have also added a support line, and it is a live person to talk to from 8 in the morning until 8 in the evening, 7 days a week, and in Spanish, 8 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. And we can also interpret many other languages through that line. But we also have still that the public is accessing. We have our detox services, we have our crisis services, and our crisis stabilization unit are still open, and we are serving people. And so we are very much on the front lines of healthcare and doing everything in our power to care for the behavioral health needs of those in our community. And so if anybody is interested in accessing the support line or any of those services, the number for Aurora Mental Health Center, and it will be on your handouts, but it's 303-617-2300. 303-617-2300. And again, I'm Debbie Stafford, and I just am so appreciative to the Aurora Chamber for all of your good work to immediately respond, to touch the businesses in Aurora. We all care for each other. Whenever possible, if there's a business still open, let's go do business from each other and make sure that we can help each other's businesses get through these difficult days. So I'm really happy, Rick, to take any questions if you have any questions from anybody in our audience.
Well, thank you so much, Debbie. That was awesome. We do not have any questions that have come into the question group yet, as of yet.
That's all right.
So there is that for us. I do have a question about the 1, 2, 3. Could you repeat what those were? Because I'm sure that I use one way more than I use the other two.
Oh, the mouth? Yes,
Yes.
It's called the 1, 2, 3s of active listening. So it says you have one mouth, use it the least. You have 2 eyes and 2 ears. So try to look at the person. And then the last 3 is to validate. I'll give you a great example, Rick. So when I used to come home, because I see clients at night, I'd come home and my husband would be down watching his really good guy movies, and we'd greet each other, and it was always very kind and very cheerful. And I might try to start telling him a few things about my day, and I'll notice he's got an ear headed to me and he's got his eyes still on his guy movie. And so I would sometimes say just nonsensical things like, oh, I think I'll buy a new car on Saturday. And he'd say, oh, great, that's a good idea. I didn't really hear me. So, it's just a matter of letting somebody feel that they've been heard.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it, Debbie. I am not seeing any more questions currently coming in. Are there any other exercises to deal with anxiety or something?
Can I say something, Rick?
Certainly.
This is Lynn Myers, and Debbie, I've known you probably 20
Oh, my dear friend, Lynn Myers. I love you, Lynn Myers.
But anyway, it's fun. I have enjoyed your friendship and respected you from a distance, but it's fun to see you up close doing your gig. You did a great job. I needed some of your wisdom today. It's nothing that I hadn't thought about before, but you got it through just great.
Thank you. Well, and most of us know these principles, but sometimes we just want to apply them. And I'm glad to have you all right in my living room. And you all could come over and have dinner with me tonight. We'd have a birthday party.
Yeah. Well, happy Easter too.
Thank you. Happy Easter to all of you. And, you know, I just see so many of you on here that I call you my friends. And more than anything, in Aurora, and I know it's beyond Aurora, it's our state, it's our nation, it's our world that we're all so concerned about. But Aurora and the Aurora Chamber, we're a family. And this is a time that family comes together in whatever way we have to. And if it means virtually for a while, boy, Dee Dee, do I have great respect for you and your team for what you're doing to help our business family, to help our Aurora community know that we are supported, we're cared for, and we're going to do everything we can to come together to get through this in the most successful way we can.
Great.
Thank you,
Deb,
Debbie.
I have a question from Orlando Poole, and I'm going to unmute her for the question, or him. I apologize if I got that wrong. Go ahead, Orlando.
Hi, Orlando.
Hello, hello. How are you, Miss Stafford?
Oh, great to hear you, Orlando.
I just want to say that was amazing, and thank you so much for your bright spirit. I can feel you through my phone. Okay.
Awesome.
And just thank you for helping the city of Aurora. I think it's an amazing city, and just thank you for your passion. And I hope this continues because we need all the help that we can get to make it through this.
Oh, thank you, Orlando. And we're in this together, and that's what's important. And don't be surprised before the weekend's over. I have literally a full Easter Bunny costume. You'll see me on Facebook or somewhere in it.
I have one too. Oh my God. No, I'm kidding.
Oh my God.
When I turned limited from the legislature, I tried to figure out what I could do that was just enjoyable, that wasn't about money. I bought out a costume shop. And so I bought about 60 costumes. And literally, I do singing telegrams. I walk into businesses and places and rewrite songs and embarrass people and look like an idiot myself, and I don't care. Isn't that great?
You're having fun. That's all that matters.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's all just be real with each other. I love that.
I do have a question. Yes, Christy, the paper she talked about for the fridge posting will be sent out to all of you. That'll be coming out.
Yes. 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 And I numbered something wrong in my outline. I'm going to fix it quick. And so Dee Dee will have my handouts before the afternoon's over. And then however she can get them out to you, you'll be able to access them.
Dee Dee,
Yes.
it looks like you have a question.
I do. Well, first of all, happy belated birthday, Debbie.
Oh, thank you, Dee Dee.
That was my wonderful husband, Orlando, coming to you live from Denver Health. So we're wishing
Orlando from Denver Health. Thank you, Orlando, for all you're doing to keep people healthy and well.
Yes. And
Well,
I did have a question for you. So, we talk about all these great exercises and what we can do to keep ourselves sane and remind ourselves. But then, when we're in the meetings, it seems to me like for myself, it's great. And then when you leave the meeting, then life happens. And then you turn on the news and then you hear conflicting information. So can you recommend some exercises that we can do to kind of stop and remind ourselves of what we need to do?
Oh, I love that question, Dee Dee. And, I would encourage, some basics like deep breathing, just really allowing some breath to get in. Also trying to take a walk, trying to turn on some music and really regulate the amount of time that we're picking up the news. So even after the news, find something that is a positive distraction. And I would encourage that for some people, that's their faith, whatever their faith might be. For other people, they have family to turn to. For some people, reading a great book is a really good distraction. Or baking. I'm gonna tell you what I've done because I'm doing work throughout in the home. I moved my laptop into my kitchen and I let myself be seen. And then if others are talking, I literally turn off my video. I made banana bread during a business meeting yesterday. So, find ways that you're engaged and yet you're still doing a little bit that feels like you're taking care of you.
Right. I will say out of everything else, self-care is the one thing that I have learned throughout this all, because before having, you know, the ability to work from home, it's rush, 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 rush. You know, a lot of times I'm not even eating lunch, but this has forced me to take that time for myself. So thank you so much for those great ideas. I appreciate you, Debbie.
Well, and we have, in our family, we have a few nurses, and my sister is also a veterinarian. And this morning I saw, I'm like, I guess my generation, I hate this because they say that it's like the older generation that's really into Facebook, but it's what I know to do. But there was a post about giving yourself permission to just stop taking care of other people and take care of you for a while. Mm-hmm. And when I posted it, you know who responded back were some of the nurses who said, mm-hmm. I needed to hear it, that it was okay to still take care of me.
Mm.
Yeah.
We're all amazing, wonderful people, and it's important. And, you know, and we all approach life differently. I am an obnoxious person in the morning. I wake up happy. I wake up happy for the new day. And I create my environment that way. And not everybody likes that. And so I've had to learn to be a little thoughtful in my morning meetings over who's excited that I'm up and have my act together early in the morning.
This is Rick, and I work with her, so I agree.
We do a 9 a.m. check-in in the mornings, and I'm almost ready for lunch by then because I've had my breakfast so many hours before.
So I don't see any more questions coming in. Does anyone have any last-minute thoughts or questions for Debbie?
And if not, we give each other the gift of time. Oh, Rini, my friend, how are you?
I just want to thank you for your inspirational optimism as always, and for being such a great friend of the Chamber. Thank you very much, Debbie.
Oh, thank you. And thanks for your good work. And I think your wife, Diane, had joined us today as well. So I'm so excited.
You know what? You joked about it a minute ago, but the reason why I don't have you on video, she's here in the kitchen with us. She'll say hi, but she's cooking while listening.
Oh, I hope you're making something good. Well, everybody should know that Diane has a really great book. So if you need to access Diane's book and read it, contact Rini at the Chamber. He'll get it for you. So congratulations.
Nice.
Yeah, a lot of great things. You know, isn't it fun that we're like family? We're just together as family. And that's what I love about our city. I can't wait to be back. Actually, you know, I was to have been the presenter at the Chamber yesterday morning in government affairs. So maybe another time.
We're probably going to do that at the beginning of May, Debbie, so I'll be in touch with you.
You just tell me, I'll be there.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Rosalind Reese chimes in that you are awesome. Thank you, and God bless.
Our dear friend Rosalind Reese, I love you and all the important work you do with the Alzheimer's Association. And thank you, Rosalind, and take care of yourself as well. Well, I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining us. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Dee Dee, for making this possible. I'm going to go fix my mistake on my outline, send it to you. Post the stress relief rules to live by. They'll be good for you, good for your loved ones. They're good for coworkers. So when you go back to work, post them in the staff bulletin room or something. So they'll be, awesome. You'll love those tools.
I have one last comment from Dee Dee.
Yes, thank you everybody for joining. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Rick. This is wonderful. You know, the longer that we're doing these, the more participation that we have. Debbie, I do want to let you know that this is the highest participation that we've had so far with our webinars, at 26 people that have joined this webinar today.
Wow.
Yes.
Awesome.
So really, really awesome. And,
awesome.
You know, it's just, and I also want to let everybody know, so we're going to do this for about the next 7 or more weeks. So the Aurora Mental Health is going to be on here every Friday from 2 to 3. So tune in on our chamber calendar so that you can see all the upcoming events. And if you're not on my distribution list and would like to be on my distribution list so that you can get these updates, please feel free to email me at dd.poole@aurorachamber.org. That's DEEDEE.P as in Papa, OOLE @aurorachamber.org. And I'll put that on the chat for everybody to have as well. So we'll get these updates out to you. We have other guest speakers next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We have 2 on Friday. Friday, the 17th, we're going to have the City of Aurora speaking. So if you have any questions from tax and licensing, please join us where you can talk to them directly. And Debbie, do you have your contact information or contact information for the Aurora Mental Health that you would like for us to post as well?
Absolutely. Do you want me to give it to you now, or because anybody can reach me? Well, Aurora Mental Health is 303-617-2300. You can find me that way as well. And also, if you need me, it's Debbie Stafford, my name, at aumhc.org. And I'll make sure you get all of that when you get the information that will be sent out. And you know, Dee Dee, I know many of you know I'm also an auctioneer, and with 26 people on the phone, I could start raising money for the Aurora Chamber real quick and see if we can help do some good work there. So, you know, I'm not beyond that. So if you keep me live very long, I'm either going to break out in song, I'm going to raise money, or you might get another prayer. Who knows what could happen if you kept me.
We have 15 minutes left, so let's.
Well, anyway, I want to thank all of you. You're all just awesome, and thank you for all that you're doing. And I look forward to all of us being together again. I love there was a good post. It said, when we're back together and we can hug, we're going to hug everybody. We'll hug the cashier. We'll hug everybody that smiled at us. We're all just going to be hugging each other.
Mitzi Schindler says, thank you so much.
Love you, Mitzi. Thanks for all your great work. Everybody choose to have a good weekend. It'll be a good weekend.
It will. And I want to share on behalf of my boss, Lori Banks at Aurora Mental Health Center, that we really appreciate this opportunity to work with the Chamber on this effort collectively. Dee Dee, you have been awesome in just getting this up and running and helping me stay calm through the anxiety of getting this thing to work and all of the above. So I look forward to the rest of the webinars going even smoother. So thank you for all of our participants, very much so.
So one last thing. I have a poem that I memorized years ago through a hard time. Some of you know it. It's called Don't Quit. It says, when things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile, but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is queer with its twists and turns, and every one of us sometimes learns that many a failure turns about, and he might have won had he stuck it out. So stick to the fight when you're hardest hit. It's when things seem worst that you must not quit. God bless you. Everyone have a great weekend.
Thank you so much, Debbie.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.